And joining us now to talk more about this is Jeff Parsons, a retired FBI special agent who spent decades working in counterterrorism and counterintelligence.
He also served as the supervisory special agent to investigate threats in our region, and he now works with the George Washington University's program on extremism. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with Secretary Rubio's remarks. You listened to his speech today. What are your thoughts of this being a blind spot, as he put it?
I think he's very accurate in raising this as a new concern. Over the last 20 years, we concentrated on Islamic terrorism coming from ISIS and Al Qaeda, rightfully so. But in the last few years, we've seen a rise in threats of violence from left-wing groups that are aligned to grievances that align with them. So as we've seen in history of political terrorism, movements change, threats change. It's appropriate now to relook at what the threats are, and we should concentrate on the threats coming from these groups.
And what is your concern level when it comes to far left political violence? Rubio mentioned anarchists. Is that something you're seeing in the United States?
Our research has shown that there are definitely acts of violence and threats coming from these groups. There's threats from a variety of groups right now, but this is definitely on the rise. We see a lot of grievances that are aligned to left-wing groups, such as technical concerns, data centers, immigration. All these things are fermenting right now, and people are concerned and they have grievances, and often they act out in violence because of those. So it is a concern we should be worried about.
Is there a danger in calling it far left versus far right? Would a term more like domestic terrorism be more fitting?
Terms get very complicated very quickly because domestic terrorism can mean a lot of things, different groups. I think left wing and right wing somewhat simplifies the issue beyond what it should be. It's more important to kind of go over the grievances that they care about and highlight it that way. And to be fair, some people just want to cause violence too. So it is always hard beforehand to figure out what the grievance is, but we should look at what it is they're concerned about rather than the general left or right wing side of things.
Okay, let's talk about some of those driving forces. What do you think is the main one, and what's the single most effective thing that you believe can be done to stop political violence?
Well, if I could stop violence, I would be a lot more wealthy right now and a lot more impactful. I don't think anyone has the perfect answer, and there's no simple answer to this. Right now, we do see things rising. I think, generally speaking, the more we have polite discourse, the more we have polite conversations back and forth, and can listen and appreciate people, that's always better. The concern now is that violence has become normalized. People think that violence is a legitimate way to handle their grievance, and as that increases, we'll always see violence increase as well.
And Jeff, just to tap into now your experience as a federal agent, there's a new proposal by the Trump administration to fence off Lafayette Park, as well as adding more fencing around the White House. Did you feel this was necessary, that level of security, when you served in the FBI in this area?
Well, I wish it wasn't, and I don't think it was when I first started, but we've seen threats increase. And I don't think you can say the threat picture is always the same. So sometimes there's a higher threat, sometimes a lower threat. But in this case, it would make sense to give the Secret Service the tools they need to mitigate threats if that threat rises. So in other words, I'd rather have the measures in place and use them when needed rather than improvising later on. So unfortunately, where we are right now, it would make sense to have a fence. Every time you do this, there's always a balance between free speech and security, and you can never have a perfect balance. I can give you perfect security and no free speech, or the vice versa. In this case, it does make sense to give them the tools they need to provide security while still maintaining free speech rights.
Finally, do you think there's any turning back from this, or is this just the new normal for this country?
I like to think, 'cause I'm an eternal optimist, that we will get better at some point. We look at our history, we've had periods like this before. In the 60s and 70s, it was routine to have bombings in this country. And then we had years of prosperity afterwards. So I don't think it's the new normal. It's something you have to handle right now and be mindful of it right now. But I do see better days ahead for our country.
Absolutely. And I guess it's up to the people to decide if this is something they'll accept. Jeff Parson, thank you so much. A retired FBI special agent, now with the George Washington University program on extremism. We thank you for your time and expertise.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.